The face you guys see on the screen, and girls, because I know I have to keep this gender neutral, would not be familiar to anyone from a 1990s cultural historical standpoint. And whether he knows it or not, he is, from that sense of that time period, sort of a historical, kind of controversial type person. To me, he wasn't. People who are watching this, maybe kids of the 80s and 90s, recall the Jenny Jones show. This is where the person on screen right now made their preview. Now, it's important to note that at the time that I was watching the Jenny Jones show, I was a bullied kid the entire time in high school, whether it was covert or overt. The first time I came across Jude Angelini, at that time known as Rude Jude, well, he still technically uses that moniker, which I think is genius, but I'm gonna not touch on that right now. Okay. A girl from high school that Jude had bullied brought him on the Jenny Jones show to confront him and let him know that she had moved on and had a better life or whatever. This is going to sound controversial, and I recommend you guys go see clips of Rude Jude, because you can find some on YouTube. I don't remember exact YouTubers who have his clips, but please go watch the clips. The 1990s was a trip. That's all I'm got to say. And I'm going to give you a fair warning. You got to have a thick skin, because he didn't pull no punches, and I thought it was fantastic. And that's even for a person like myself that was bullied. So I'm going to paraphrase for copyright purposes. Not exactly paraphrase, I'm going to free talk, which is a sort of paraphrase. Rude Jude basically let her know that he wasn't going to apologize for some stuff he said years ago. And mind you, I'm sitting there watching. Now, this dude could crack on people like no other. He had me dying. I lived to see Jenny Jones to watch Rude Jude. This dude right here wasn't, he was it back then. So he basically told the girl, I ain't apologizing to you. And the way it came across was that her bringing him there was overreach, because it's like, why would you want an apology for something that he did when he was a kid? And I kept thinking, if people start to do this in the future where they're overreaching and wanting somebody who bullied them to feel something and to apologize, don't get me wrong, this depends on your level of bullying. There's levels. This has a level. This has more. I ain't gonna say levels. I'm gonna say multi-layers. It's all going to depend on what you're going through, particularly for your hard-headed high school kids who know you're watching this video because you're hot-headed. And though my video ain't for kids, you're watching it anyway. If you're going through it, there are different, bullying comes in different forms. It's just in the 1999 and back, that 20th century type of bullying. People could do that back then and fairly get away with it, and some teachers would turn a blind eye. I admire in my situation that I think most of them showed pity, but could not do really anything about it, and they saw it as kids were being kids. That's the way it was. I remember darn near cursing at the TV. And it was analog. Sometimes when Rude Jude would come on, I'd get so mad. And not at him, but because the darn TV. You had to go to the antenna. You know, back then, before y'all got digital, there's this thing called analog. And you have to go move that darn clothes hanger. I'm like, man, I'm trying to listen to Rude Jude. As a bullied kid sitting there watching that in a very mature state, I admired his stance. See, here's the thing about bullying these days. The kids are more compassionate now. There was a story, and I know everyone saw it, of two kids that participated in helping bully a poor kid. They went home, had a change of heart, and came back to school with bags of clothes for this kid. And once they got his backstory after that, it's like, wow. That story touched my heart. Wouldn't have happened 1999 and back. I can about guarantee you those stories were few and far between. And maybe they had happened, but because we didn't have cameras everywhere on phones back then, or very few people had cell phones if they did have cameras, you just didn't record things like that. But it was touching to me to know that this generation, that those kids on the spot apologized. And they even showed that kid empathy and compassion and brought him things that he was not expecting to get. And even his mom was grateful. Oh, back when I was being bullied, back in the 1990s, when kids were dressing their Polo Ralph Lauren and when All American was the it, and we'll get into that in the third and final installment called Materialism. Because that's where I'm going to really dig deep into high school politics. Okay. So I ain't going to go into right now that 1990s fashion. I'm not going to really show clips of it either, but I'm just going to talk about it in general. I admire that he did not apologize. Now, let me say this. I don't condone that the woman he brought on the show was bullied and scarred from the things he may have said. But when people are often cruel to you and you hold on to it, you're holding that more than they are. Now, let's be honest. When kids are kids, they spout off to the mouth and they'll say something insensitive to you and don't even remember that they ever said it. Just as I've had people, like maybe one girl who bullied me years ago, or she laughed at me being bullied. And when she reached out to me years later, and I won't say on what platform, I was like, you used to laugh at me being bullied all the time. But then a part of me was like, yeah, but this woman's darn near 30 now. She's not that silly kid anymore. This does not mean that bullying in general can be dismissed, okay? If you are that bullied kid right now, because again, I know your hotheads are watching, or if you were that bullied kid from that generation and you carried it, because I know some instances, and I'm not going to say even where I'm from, back where I'm from originally, where people who were picked on and bullied are still carrying that baggage years later. And it feels like they want an apology that they're never going to get. And I don't understand why. I don't think you should wait around for an apology, okay, for being bullied. I'll be honest with you. I was always a little eccentric. I was always a little different. I didn't go into that whole 80s, 90s Breakfast Club nonsense. It just wasn't my thing. But what I'm saying is I understand how high school can feel like, oh, you don't have the best clothes. Oh, you don't run in the best crowd. You were not this. And you feel like you're in an alien world and your parents don't understand. But I want people who experience that bullying and who still feel hurt from it. I want you right now to think about where your life is, if it's stifling you. Because here's my honest opinion. And I hope YouTube don't say I was being insensitive or whatever platforms I put this on. Do not let how someone treated you and how you perceive that treatment hold you back from living your life. Now, I know this is easy for me to say because, again, in my part one video, which I didn't touch on, I had known since I was 13 years old I was going to join the Navy. I loved aircraft carriers. I thought that big boat was fascinating. Now, my first day stepping on the John C. Stennis, I was scared. It's 2002, it was San Diego, and I was scared shitless when I looked up at it. I'm like, this is a beast. No. But I went out and did it as a scared kid who left home bullied. And I'd even known and heard of people who talked behind my back. She won't make it through boot camp. She won't do this. She won't do that. I'm like, I can't hear you while I'm out doing that. Do you understand that I bring up Rude Jude? Because after Rude Jude, more people, well, before him, there was more people that come on the show. More people would bring on others who bullied them 5 or more years after high school, wanting an apology. I look good now. You didn't want to date me back then, and la la la. The way that you were treated was wrong. Okay. I'm not going to denigrate or downplay that in any way. What I want you to recognize right now, whether you're in high school or whether you're still hurting from those scars, is that if you took it for too long past high school, because it's still fresh when you graduate. So if you're still in that little small town a year later, yeah, it's fresh. Stop giving those people power over you because you gave it to them. Excuse me, I burped. You gave it to them while they've moved on. And sometimes those people will reach right back out to you and be happy that you're successful. They've gone on, had families. This is not one of those things where I'm saying let a kid be a kid, but realize when people are younger and they're developing that they spout off to the mouth and they say stuff they don't need to say. That I'm not absolving the fact that they didn't know better, because they did. They know better. But with your mental health and you allowing it to bother you, you please do better. I get it. You weren't popular. You were pointed at. You didn't wear the right clothes. You didn't come from the right family. You didn't have the right contacts. Half the time you didn't even know why you were being pointed at in public. I'm not telling you to get over it if you're a bullied one, because I was. I was a skinny kid. I remember that some people would joke and call me crack baby. Now I know some people gonna laugh about that, but I'll let y'all have that. People will say the cruelest things to you. I can remember in middle school when some guys got together and played a prank that a good-looking kid who never paid me an ounce of attention was going to pretend to like me. And I was just stupid enough to believe that this guy was going around being my boyfriend. He would never be seen with me, but I was so happy to have his attention. Everybody goes through it. And when I found out it was a prank, I'm like, okay, I'm the butt of people's jokes. We are now in the 8th grade. High school is going to be a flash pan, and I'm never going to deal with these people again. And up until, I would say, the year 2020, I didn't much give a darn about people back home. It's just that my grandma was getting sick, and I was finally starting to do reflection, and I was thinking about what my recruiter told me years ago when he was recruiting me in the Navy in that car conversation. Chances are those people don't even remember playing that prank, or to them it was just harmless thing that kids did. But it harmed my self-esteem, and for the longest time I did stupid stuff as a result, but I put that off on me. So here's what I'll say to the bullied ones, okay? If a person comes back and apologizes, you don't have to accept that apology, okay? It would benefit you if you healed and accepted it if they do. But 2 things. Number 1, don't guilt them into apologizing to you by taking them on the show, talking about how good you look now and how much attention you want. Number 2, don't give them power over you. And what I mean by that is don't go assuming that an apology should come, because most of the time it won't. I'm serious. People will do things to you and they don't even remember that they've done them. So what I'm telling you is, if you were bullied and you stay in your small town or your small city, just keep it moving and ignore them. And if you go off in the world, don't go back doing things to come back to seek validation from those same people. Because sometimes in their mind, it reaffirms that you are as ridiculous as they thought you were. And perhaps they're more ridiculous than you. But guilting people into feeling bad, that's not going to work. Go find healing. Do better. Be better, but not so much that you need to throw it in people's face. Alrighty then, we're going to move on to the final one. The material. Alright? Hope this helped. Talk to y'all later.